Alright, back to another album review. It's been 2 years since the last time I did a review on any of the solo albums by Chris Cornell. And today's review is on No One Sings Like You Anymore, Volume 1. So it's the fifth and final studio album from Chris Cornell. Now, the album was recorded in 2016 by Tom Sierowski and Kyle Stevens at two different studios, Henson Recording Studios and The Record Plant over in Hollywood. The album was produced and mixed by Brendan O'Brien. This isn't the first time Brendan has worked with Chris, since Brendan was heavily involved with Audioslave's second and third albums, which I reviewed back in 2019. All the instrumentals were performed by Chris Cornell and Brendan O'Brien. The string arrangements were done by David Rossi. Even though this album was recorded in 2016, it wasn't released until December of 2020. The physical versions weren't released until March 19th of the following year. Not sure why it took so long to release it. The album was released under Universal Music Enterprises, which is the catalog division of Universal Music Group. For instance, I've talked about UMG in the past about them being complete assholes to their artists, as well as screwing over YouTubers for using music clips in their videos. That's a different story. One thing I need to mention is that although this is marketed as a studio album, it's actually a collection of covers. There's nothing wrong with doing an album that consists entirely of covers, because I normally let artists do what they want to do. Just as a disclaimer, I've only heard two of the original versions of these songs, Watching the Wheels by John Lennon and Patience by Guns N' Roses. Speaking of which, let's talk about the songs. This album starts with a cover of Get It While You Can by Janis Joplin. I think it's rather interesting that Chris decided to cover a song by Janis Joplin. Even though I've never heard the original version, this cover is actually really good. And we're only getting started. Up next is a cover of Jump Into the Fire by Henry Nilsson. Even though I'm not familiar with Henry Nilsson, I do think this is a pretty good cover. Not only that, but it sounds much more energetic than the first song. I should mention that this is the second longest song on the album at 3 minutes and 35 seconds long. The next song is Sad Sad City. The original version was made by Ghostland Observatory. Even though I'm not familiar with Ghostland Observatory, I really enjoy this cover. It retains much of Chris Cornell's signature style when it comes to his solo work. And this is also my favorite song on the album. After that is Patience. I already started this as a cover of a song by Guns N' Roses, and I've heard the original version before. Now, this cover was released as a single on July 20th, 2020, in order to commemorate what would have been Chris Cornell's 56th birthday. I personally think this cover is just as good as the original version. It's followed up by Nothing Compares to You, which is a cover of a song by The Family, which was a side project by Prince. Now, when it comes to Prince, I have heard a few of his songs, and he was a great musician to say the least. Although I never knew anything about his side project, The Family, and I may actually check them out someday. Also, I think Chris did a good job with this cover. He followed up with Watching the Wheels. I mentioned earlier that the original version was made by John Lennon. Yeah, the original version is very good, and Chris absolutely nailed it with this cover. After that is You Don't Know Nothing About Love. Even though the original version was made by Carl Hall. Now, I'm not familiar with Carl Hall, to be honest, but I do think Chris did a good job with this cover. It's also the shortest song on the album at 3 minutes and 4 seconds. That's followed up by Showdown. And the original version was made by Electric Light Orchestra. I'll be honest and say that Electric Light Orchestra is on the long list of artists I'm not familiar with, and I may check them out someday. It's also the heaviest song on the album, and my second favorite overall. After that is To Be Treated Right, and the original version is by Terry Reid. I think I may have heard of Terry Reid somewhere, but I can't remember. Also, Chris went more in the direction of acoustic rock with this song. This is also tied with Watching the Wheels as the second shortest song at 3 minutes and 14 seconds long. Now, this album ends with Stay With Me Baby, and the original version is made by Lorraine Ellison. This cover has a rather slower pace to it. Even though I'm unfamiliar with Lorraine Ellison, I do think this is a good cover. It's also the longest song on the album at 4 minutes and 15 seconds. I also think this album ends the album perfectly. I also think this song ends the album perfectly. I read that this version was actually featured on the HBO series Vinyl, even though I've never seen that show. As an added bonus, the song features Matt Chamberlain on drums. Matt has previously worked with Chris on his solo album Higher Truth from 2015. He's also worked with other artists including David Bowie, Randy Newman, Bob Dylan, A Perfect Circle, Bruce Springsteen, Elton John, Sean Lennon, The Who, and several others. I personally think it's really awesome that he decided to work with Chris Cornell once again. Rather, this album peaked at number 78 on the Billboard 200, number 8 on the US Top Alternative Albums, and number 10 on the US Talk Rock Albums. I've seen a lot of people say that this album is really good. Hell, it's got a 4.5 out of 5 on Amazon, and 5 out of 5 on Target's website. Also, Everett True of Louder Sound gave this album a 3.5 out of 5. Another thing I noticed is that Corey Grover of Rolling Stone magazine gave this album a 3.5 out of 5 as well. I will give him a point for that, but I'm not giving that fucking hipster for talking shit about Bush. Did I mention that Rolling Stone usually does a poor job in reviewing music? Now, as for my opinion on this album, I think it's a very good album overall. Even though it's a collection of covers that was released under the umbrella that is UMG, I do enjoy it for what it is. I highly recommend this album. You may have noticed that the title says Volume 1, meaning it's possible that there's more unreleased solo work from Chris Cornell that hasn't been released yet. Hopefully it will get released at some point. Before I end the video, I'd like to give a special shout out to the Legit Gamer 91 for supporting my work and for being a good friend. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description, and I recommend subscribing to it because he could use your support. Now's the part where I question you. Have you listened to No One Sings Like You Anymore, Volume 1? If so, what are your thoughts on it? What's your favorite song from it? Do you think Brendan O'Brien was the right producer for Chris Cornell to work with? Do you think there's more solo work from Chris that hasn't been released yet? And let me know in the comments. If you like the video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to hit the notification bell to notify future uploads. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon with another video.